on in terms of getting this recorded. I will also let you know, just to address that question now, and this is something we'll highlight later, but our program and our team is putting together video modules page as well as eventually on the OIEP website. And so that information will be made available to you and is already available to you on Blackboard in some capacity. So there's elements of this presentation that are already outlined in the video modules, but we'll certainly, I just got notification, it looks like we are recording on this end. So this will be made available to you therefore after this is all over. Just because there's a large number of people here, I always like doing icebreakers, but because there's a large number of people, that might take a little too much time. And so I guess I wanted to introduce myself first and then kind of throw out a potential icebreaker for you all to consider. And you can share in the chat or we can share afterwards as well. So my name is Matthew DeSantis. I'm the Executive Director for Institutional Effectiveness here at Mason. I'm relatively new to Mason. Actually, I just surpassed my first month here on the job. So I'm very excited to be joining you all here at Mason and really excited for the work that we have ahead. And so the icebreaker question that I'd like to throw out there is for you to think about, and maybe this is pretty well aligned with Halloween too, because people are dressing up as all sorts of things today. I know the kids are for school and things like that. But if I know we're the Mason, George Mason Patriots, but if you could pick out a mascot for your particular unit or your particular program, what mascot would you all have? And so for those of us in institutional effectiveness and planning, we were thinking about this yesterday and we were joking around quite a bit. And for some reason, Eeyore from Winnie the Pooh seemed to come up quite frequently. So, and I see at this point a zombie already. I understand 2020 is almost over. And as somebody who taught political science for a long time, I very much still feel the same way. Next Tuesday can't get here soon enough. But think about what your program mascot is and maybe share that in the chat, or we can circle back around and share that at the end. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and kind of share a presentation for today. And what we want to do today is just kind of provide a general overview for academic program review. And you could, again, if you have questions throughout, feel free to put them in the chat. Other members of our team will relay those questions to me if I don't have a chance to see it. But I will be stopping frequently throughout the presentation to address any questions that might come up. And we'll also set plenty of time aside at the end for additional questions as well. So plenty of opportunity for feedback and back and forth. As I mentioned, my name is Matthew DeSantis. My contact information is listed there. Email is always the quickest way. You can certainly call my office number. I have my voicemail set up. I'm not in my office, but I'm in Masonvale, so I'm very close by. So I walk through campus all the time. So I do feel like I'm on campus quite a bit. But feel free to contact me anytime with questions about not just APR, but any sort of data needs that your department may have. Always happy to, even if I can't address those, direct them to the proper individuals in our office. So wanting to provide a general overview of the agenda for the presentation today as it relates to academic program review. So first, starting off with an overview of what is academic program review, why are we doing it, who typically is involved, etc. Then moving into the products that are going to be produced through the APR process and within your units and your programs. And then moving forward, touching base about the resources that are available. Some of those resources, some of you may have already taken a look at on the Blackboard page or on the OIEP website. But there are also plenty of resources for external agencies such as SCHEV or IPEDS, which are Commonwealth and government agencies. And then also reviewing the next steps of how are we going to kind of continue with this progress and how are we going to initiate that in the weeks and months ahead. And then obviously, as I mentioned, having plenty of time to answer questions at the end. So to provide a brief overview of what is APR, APR is a section of academic programs. The point is to develop goals and actions to ultimately strengthen your program and to set your program on a strategic direction that is aligned with your college as well as the institution at large. Ultimately, an academic program review should put in place strategic goals and directions for your program that are very parallel to and supporting with those of your college and Mason as an institution. So, that's something that I think is always important to keep in mind, that your program does not exist kind of in an isolated sphere, that you're part of a much larger group here, and that, making sure that your goals and directions are aligned strategically. But ultimately, this is about strengthening your program and strengthening the outcomes for your program, whether those be student-based or research-based or faculty-based, or all three, actually. So who does APR? All degree awarding programs without external accreditation requiring rigorous SLO assessment. That is something that is determined by our office, but there are some programs that do have a very robust third-party external accreditation process. And in those instances, those programs are able to submit what they use for their external accreditation process to our office for academic program review. Other programs that might have third-party accreditation, but it's more of a nominal process or maybe not quite as rigorous, will still have to go through the internal Mason process. Certainly they can use some of the materials they generated during their third-party accreditation process, but again, going through the Mason process will be important for them. So when is APR conducted? It is conducted every 7 years. So for most of you, for most of your programs and your units, the last time you all went through this was 2015, or the last time it was submitted was 2015. There are a couple of new programs I know that are in here. Neuroscience, I know, is a new program that has not gone through it before. I believe organizational psychology is another one that has not gone through it before. So for a couple of you, this is a new process, but for many of you, this is a process that your program and your unit has gone through previously. And if some of you may have very well gone through that process 7 years ago and been a part of that. If not, I'm sure there are people in your program who are still here from 7 years ago who may be able to provide you insight into it. And so that's something we very much encourage, that there should be that constant institutional knowledge of what's happened previously, so that we don't get kind of stuck in a repetitive loop of just kind of repeating the same things again and again. So why do we do APR? I think that's kind of a fundamental question that needs to be addressed. So we do APR to ultimately strengthen our programs and to improve not just student learning, but student success, student outcomes. And when I say student outcomes, I'm referring to graduation and retention, job placement, graduate school placement. These are things that we are very invested in as an institution, obviously. But it's also an opportunity to strengthen your program from a standpoint of research opportunities and grant opportunities, to identify those areas where there might be the potential for growth. So while it is very focused on the student experience, there's opportunity to bring in other aspects of your program to make sure that it's a well-rounded and holistic program review. One of the things you'll notice that I don't mention here is our regional accreditation body, SACS-COC. We don't do APR for SACS-COC. SACS-COC, when they come to our campus or they review our documentation, certainly look at APR. It is an important standard for them. But ultimately, APR is a best practice. And we would be doing this if we had no third-party accreditation agencies, which maybe sounds like utopia for some of you. I've lived in that sphere for a while, and it actually sounds pretty good to me too. But even if we lived in a world where that wasn't an issue, APR is still something we'd be doing because it's a best practice, and it makes sure that we're strengthening our programs and that we're constantly evaluating our programs. I think complacency is something that can happen sometimes, not just in higher education, but across all industry. And I think it's important to constantly evaluate, where are we? What are our strengths? How has the landscape shifted potentially in higher education in the Commonwealth of Virginia? These are really important questions to be asking as we go through program, so that we can, within your programs, can evaluate the best way forward strategically over the next 7 years. So it's like I said, that's a really kind of the why we do APR. So just to talk through a little bit about what the process is going to look like as you go through APR over the next 18 months. And it is an 18-month process. It is a rather elongated timeline. And that's a good thing because we want you to take your time. We don't want this to be rushed. We want this to be thorough, and we want this to be reflective as well, and not just kind of slapped together and kind of felt. We don't want it to feel, and APR should never feel as just checking of a box or a rubber stamp of some way. This should be a very introspective and reflective process that you go through as a department that is ultimately quite meaningful for setting your department and your unit on a positive trajectory for the next 7 years. But it ultimately starts with planning. And that is the first step of that is selecting your APR committee within your unit. Some of your units are quite large, and so you'll have a lot of people to choose from, potentially. Other units are a little bit smaller, and perhaps most of the faculty within your particular area might be on the APR committee. So that is a potential thing that could happen. I know when I used to teach, I was in a department of 2 people, and guess what? We were both on the APR committee. So when you're in a really small department, you kind of get to do everything. But like I said, those of you in bigger departments, bigger units, bigger programs, selecting those committee members is really the first step, identifying them and selecting them. Then collecting and analyzing data. And there's a lot of data, and we're going to talk through some of that today. I'm going to show you where you can find some of that information, not just on the OIEP website, but on the SCHEV website and on the other external agency websites. Actually, some of the video modules are already built, can kind of walk you through that step through screencasts, kind of click by click to show you how to access that information. But there's a lot of data out there. One of the things I will emphasize is that you should not feel the need to use every single last piece of data that is available to you. You should review all of that data, but ultimately this is about telling a narrative. This is about telling a story about your program, where it is and where it wants to go. And so, combing through all of this data and finding those data points that are particularly meaningful, particularly impactful for your program as you move forward is going to be quite pivotal. And so it can be pretty overwhelming at first as you sift through that data. But like I said, don't feel too overwhelmed by it, because ultimately it's about paring it down a little bit and determining what's going to be most effective for your particular program. Completing any missing SLO assessments is also something that typically is what we want to focus on in the beginning of the process. So hopefully within your programs, you've been assessing one learning outcome each year for the last 7 years since you last completed your APR. And if you've done that, then in all likelihood, you have complete learning outcome data, and you don't need to worry about any additional SLO assessment. If, however, maybe there were a couple of years where you weren't able to collect those SLO assessments, and there's a couple of data points that are missing in that case, working through that and developing an assessment plan in the spring semester to make sure you're able to collect that information is going to be important. And Sheena Surslev is going to speak to that in a little bit later. She's a colleague of mine in institutional effectiveness and planning. She's also relatively new to Mason, but I hope some of you have had the opportunity to meet and work with Sheena. She's been a really wonderful addition, and so we're thrilled to have her here, and she'll talk through some of the assessment aspects of this. And then ultimately, once you review all of this data and information, developing those new goals for the next 7 years for your program based upon the evidence and kind of embedding that into the self-study. In terms of the self-study itself and writing the self-study, this is kind of a 4-part process. One is kind of providing that unit level overview. So what are what's the mission, what's your faculty resources, what's your student enrollment look like. There's a lot of information here, and this is actually all broken out quite specifically in the APR guide that I'm going to show you a little bit later. Again, the APR guide is already on the Blackboard page for you all. It's also already on the OIEP website as well. So multiple points where you can access that guide. And well, like I said, I'll go into more detail about that in a little bit. But providing that kind of unit level overview is kind of step one. And then providing specific degree program information underneath that. So for those of you who might be in a unit with multiple programs, you'll be wanting to break out those programs individually within your APR. There might be some overlap in terms of maybe they share 4 of the same 6 learning outcomes, for instance. So there could be some overlap when you're breaking that information out. But certainly units that have multiple programs, your APR is going to be a little bit longer, just from a standpoint of just length. Like I said, content, there could be there's some overlap. But obviously units that only have 1 or 2 programs can be a little bit more brief. And then if there are any certificates within your unit or area for program review, to include some information about those certificates as well. The certificate section is pretty brief as outlined on the APR guide, a little bit more just focused on the mission of the purpose of why the certificate is being offered, some minimal enrollment information and assessment information. And then finally, the kind of concluding statement where you put forth what your strategy and plan is for the next 7 years. Here at Mason, currently, we have an internal peer review process for the self-study. So once you submit the self-study, it is then reviewed by your faculty peers, and they will provide feedback on the APR self-study to our office. And we will then reach out to you all and work through that. If there are comprehensive feedback that is given in terms of if changes need to be made or if goals need to be realigned or expectations perhaps maybe too high or too low, we'll see. But it is a process that your faculty, colleagues and peers will be reviewing. And then finally, meeting with the leadership team. And I think this is really important that once the APR self-study is complete and has been peer reviewed, that it's an opportunity for our office and your program to meet with academic leadership. And it's an opportunity to do that to make sure that ultimately the goals that you all have set for your program are able to be supported by academic leadership. I think that's a really important point and goes back to something I said earlier about alignment. You want to make sure that the goals and the strategies that you're putting forth in your program are going to be aligned with the college and the university. Having that meeting with leadership is a way of making sure that everyone's on the same page regarding what is the goal of this program, where are we going for the next 7 years, what sort of resources can be allocated, not only at the programmatic level, but at the collegiate level as well as at the university level. So it's going to be, that's a pivotal process, I think, that it shouldn't feel like just a perfunctory meeting, but really an opportunity to be aligned in terms of support and structure moving forward. So I'll stop there briefly. I know I've seen a couple of things come through on the chat, but I haven't been able to see them. So Sheena or Karen, if there are any questions that have come up already, I'm happy to address them.
No, I don't think that there've been any anything. I think it's just all about how creative people are with their mascots.
That's lovely. I cannot wait to read all of these at the end. We'll share them all at the end. So if you haven't submitted your mascot yet, please do so. This is great. Now I have something to look forward to. I'm going to rush through the rest of the presentation just to hear what the mascots are. No, that's wonderful. And like I said, if you have questions throughout, feel free to just type them into the chat and I'll address them kind of whenever I have the opportunity to, and we can certainly have a discussion at the end as well. So in terms of the products for APR, the self-study report, this is very similar to what I just outlined in terms of it being kind of a 4-section document with looking at the unit level first, looking at the goals and the actions at the unit level, then moving down to the programmatic level, depending on how many programs you may have, identifying the improvement plans that need to be put in place for the program, and And I would always say this, when I talk about improvement plans, and there's a lot of ways we can talk about vernacular here. You'll hear me say very frequently continuous improvement, but I've heard continuous enhancement. I hear the dreaded term closing the loop, which is a phrase that is used frequently in the accreditation world. I really like. But whatever you want to phrase it as, there's always an opportunity for continued growth within a program. And I think that's important to keep in mind, so that when you're evaluating the learning outcome assessment within your program, even if your students are doing well, we all know this as educators, that there's always an opportunity for growth. Even an A paper has an opportunity to get better. So it is, looking at where are those opportunities, identifying the strengths of a particular program, their weaknesses, the opportunities, the potential threats. I mean, right now in higher education, it's a very volatile time. So looking at, what does the landscape in higher education look like? What are our peer institutions doing? How are things going in the Commonwealth in terms of enrollment and demographic trends? I was just at a webinar, I think 2 weeks ago, that was talking about how that was going to be impacting Mason in terms of demographic trends and population growth and college age population growth and students increasingly coming from institutions like Nova, and what does that mean for your program, and what does that mean for enrollment capacity, et cetera. So there are all of these things that are taking place, and so taking all of that into consideration when thinking about how to improve and enhance the student experience and the experience of our faculty as well. Then section 3, focusing on those certificates, and then kind of concluding everything in section 4. You'll see here a couple of dates. So everything is due on the 1st of the month. And that's just easier to remember the 1st rather than kind of other arbitrary days. If the 1st ever falls on a Sunday, which I don't actually think it does for any of these dates, I can live with it being submitted on a Monday. I like watching football on Sundays as much as the next person. So if it doesn't come in Sunday, that's not the end of the world. But like I said, I don't think any of these are on Sundays. But nonetheless, draft reports are due December 1st, 2021. So you have over a year to work on this process. So really, and this is something I'll talk about in a second, but really the spring should be that kind of planning semester, this coming spring 2021. And then really the writing should be taking place in the fall of 2021. So the draft report is due in December, and that will be submitted to me. I will then kind of review those drafts and provide you feedback by the beginning of January when you come back from the holiday break. And then the final report will be due in February 2022, February 1st, 2022. At that point, those final reports will be submitted to the APR peer review teams, and they will provide a report by March 1st, 2022. If there's any additional feedback or kind of dialogue that needs to take place between then, after that point, we can certainly do that. We can navigate that space. But then we move forward with the memorandum of understanding, which is what I outlined previously with regards to meeting with academic leadership and making sure that we have kind of officially closed the APR cycle and identifying what actions are going to be needed in terms of fulfilling those 7-year goals and strategies that you've put in place in your APR process. So APR resources, there are a lot. And the number one resource there is going to be your APR guide. And as I mentioned, I taught political science for about 10 years before I moved into assessment and institutional effectiveness work. And while I was never one of those instructors to chastise students by saying, it's in the syllabus, they would ask questions like, how long does the paper have to be? And I would very politely explain to them how long the paper would have to be. And then I would mention kind of at the end, this information is also included in the syllabus. But this is kind of my syllabus for APR in some way. The guide is, where everything really is. It's about a 30-page document. It's quite comprehensive. And it's available on the Blackboard page. It's available on the OIEP website. So, that's something that is there. Now, I am going to see about sharing my screen to share with you all the document here. there we go. So this is on the APR, this is on the OIEP website. And so you can find the APR guide for 2022 reports right here. And this is, like I said, a pretty thorough document. It kind of outlines some of the information we're going over today in terms of the different aspects of the self-study. So in particular, kind of going into details about things like peer comparison or SWOT analysis. For those of you who are not familiar with SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, and really kind of outlining some of the things that I already discussed with regards to how that relates to SWOT analysis. And so this is a pretty extensive document. It also provides a more detailed timeline with regards to what you need to be completing at different stages of the APR process in terms of fall, spring 2020 and 2021, and then moving into the writing and submission process in fall and spring of 2021 and 2022. Like I said, there's more detailed information in this about those items listed above, the SWOT analysis, the peer comparison. As I mentioned, one of the data modules or video modules on the Blackboard site focuses specifically on the peer analysis question. And so we can go into more detail about that. That's something that is obviously going to be a little bit different for each of your programs, determining who your peers are and collecting that information. And there's also kind of very practical information about making curriculum maps, et cetera. There's several appendices that provides additional information on templates and walking through a SWOT analysis, step-by-step guides to assessment, et cetera. So the template really should, or the guide really should be your first choice of like where you go to find information for the process. And so just going back to here, there's also a report template that's also found on the same website. And that template varies a little bit based upon interdisciplinary program or department and school programs. If you're unsure which template to use, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to talk you through that process. And as I mentioned here, I'll be your primary contact for APR, but there are other members of our office, Karen Manley, Giselle Durham, Sheena Surslev, really our whole OIEP office is a resource. So feel free to contact me first, but I may put you in touch with other people within our office to have specific questions answered as you go through this. So a couple of important notes, and then I'm going to turn things over to Sheena for a bit. So I just want to emphasize again the need for kind of using data for strategic planning purposes and to improve the student learning experience. And that's obviously going to be warehoused in TK20, and it's about the annual academic process and trying to keep that at the center of why we do what we do at APR. So with that being said, I'm going to turn things over to Sheena, and she can talk a little bit about what that process has been like for her to this point.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Matthew. So as Matthew had kind of mentioned earlier, programs shouldn't feel obliged to use every single piece of data that they come across, but some of the kind of central things around student learning and strategic planning can often be found in previous annual assessment submissions. So that is a really important place to take inventory before kind of diving into the APR process. So as was previously mentioned, also there should be at least one learning outcome assessed each year. And so that data currently exists in TK20. There is one of our video modules that will go into more detail. It's currently on your Blackboard site as to how you can see the information that currently exists for your program and kind of look at that historic data before doing your APR report. So you should have an up-to-date mission, hopefully an up-to-date curriculum map, in addition to student learning outcomes and assessments for previous years to integrate. And so one of the other areas that we thought would be important to highlight are the improvement and action plans. As part of assessing student learning outcomes, you have measures, findings, in addition to action plans that you have for a particular outcome. And having really aligned and grounded action plans can be something that is important to integrate into APR as well.
Great, thank you, Sheena. And yeah, please, if you're not the person who has been the contact of assessment in your program, feel free to contact Sheena to find out who that person is, or talk within your program to find out who's been kind of keeping track of the TK20 assessment report. And if you have any, Sheena's put together a great video module about accessing information in TK20 that's on the Blackboard site. So a lot of information out there for you all in that space. So to follow up on that, a lot of different resources, and this PowerPoint is available on the Blackboard page. And so I'm not going to click through each of these links right now, but that's something you can certainly do just to begin to familiarize yourself with the resources that are available. From information like the templates and the guides to more database resources for APR self-study. So looking at information about the faculty survey that will be conducted on your program's behalf by us and by our department. And I'll talk about that a little bit more in a second. The alumni survey, enrollment data that's available, historical survey data that's available through our office at the institutional and programmatic level. So a lot of different data for you to sift through. As I mentioned, peer comparison data is also one that's critical to look at. So just, again, going through all of that information on these different web pages. And if you have any issues accessing that, let me know. There are a couple of links within the data resources page where you do need to make sure that you're connected to VPN. And I'm not too proud to admit that yesterday I was very concerned the link was not working, and it turned out I just was not logged into VPN. So just make sure that that happens sometimes. And we have a note. I just was not paying attention to it. I was clicking around too quickly. And so make sure to just be cognizant of that in case you're trying to access a couple of particular dashboards on our site that you'll need to have VPN for. And then Blackboard was the other site that I wanted to share information about. And so the Blackboard page, Karen Manley has loaded you all into the Blackboard page. And if there are more people that we need to load into that page, let us know and we will certainly do so. When you log into Blackboard, you'll just go to the heading Organizations. And then you'll see Academic Program Review 2022 over on the left side. And so your page might look slightly different than mine, just particularly down here with my groups. Each one of your unit areas has a group where you can exchange information, use it as kind of a workspace, email each other, etc. So that information is available, or that area is available right there. But in terms of the main information, going through kind of the APR timeline is available here, broken out by academic year. The guide and template that I've mentioned previously and shown briefly are both here. And then the survey templates as well. So this is something our office will be administering an alumni survey as well as a faculty survey for your particular unit and program. The alumni survey is something that will be sent out at the beginning of February. And that will also be when we submit or administer the faculty survey. There are some slight asks that we have of you before we submit those, and I'll go over those in a little bit. But this is an opportunity for you to get feedback from your one of your primary stakeholders, certainly your alumni, your graduates of the program, to find out their experience in the program, where they are now, how their program has benefited them in their careers and their post-graduation endeavors. And then also the faculty survey to get a sense of what are the faculty in your program prioritizing, where do they see the strengths and weaknesses and opportunities and challenges that lie ahead for the program. So those are, you can look at the actual survey itself, as well as the invitation language that will be going out to alumni in these documents here. There are the PowerPoint to this information is also included here. And then yeah, here are the video resources that I mentioned and the video modules. So as I mentioned, Sheena's already created one that walks you through the annual assessment plan process and how to access information in TK20 if you're not familiar with it. I've created one that is more of a screen that just walks you through accessing information through IPEDS, which is a national database that has enrollment, retention, graduation rate, demographic trends, et cetera, for peer and for all institutions across the United States. And so it's an opportunity for you to collect a lot of great peer data there. And then just an overview as well of data resources. I would also say that this is not an exhaustive list. We plan on, our office plans on providing more of these video modules in the weeks and months ahead, but these were just kind of a starting point we wanted to have. I would also say, because this is the first time our office is doing something like this in terms of the video resources, as you all are working through APR, please feel free to let us know what video modules or additional resources you would find helpful. When after orientation, after reviewing the guide, as you start working on your self-study, what are things that maybe you still need more clarity on, that you're still not 100% sure about, that maybe we could provide some additional resources for, to make sure that you're up to speed and that you have the support that you need as you go through this. So, feel free to, let us, if you have some ideas now, let us know in the chat. That would be great. And as you work through the process, let us know as well, because we want to make sure that we're supporting your program as much as possible. And that's a really important part for us. And these resources are going to be a component of that. I also would like to point out that there are sample APRR reports that are available here. So you can look at what previous programs have done in recent years, just to get a sense of what does this look like, not only from a length standpoint and a kind of a content standpoint, but in terms of a structure and in terms of potential goals and continuous improvement strategies, and how different departments of different sizes and levels have approached this previously. So a lot of great resources here. There will be more resources that are put in. We'll be communicating with you all through the Blackboard page pretty regularly as we add more resources and connect you to more information to support your APR process. So going back quickly to for the next steps, and I think the first part is the next immediate steps for the remainder of this semester are, I think, pretty minimal. So by or before December 1, if you could please send me the names and email addresses of your APR committee members. Some of you already have, and you communicated that with Karen, I believe, yesterday or the day before when she sent out an update about that. And so that's great. We've been able to collect that information. But for those of you who may still be in the process of formulating your APR committee for your unit, once you finalize that list, send us that list of names and email addresses so that we have it on file and we know who to communicate with throughout the process. If there are changes that are obviously made throughout for any reason whatsoever, just let us know so we can update that information in terms of giving people access in Blackboard and making sure that people are communicated with effectively. Additionally, the list of faculty survey participants with an Excel sheet with names and email addresses. So the faculty survey that will go out in February of 2021. Some programs and some units choose to survey all of their faculty, both part-time and full-time. Other programs choose to select to only survey their full-time faculty. That's a choice that is up to you in terms of a programmatic or unit level decision. But it is something where I think, depending on the nature of your program and the amount with which you rely on different groups of faculty, certainly could be helpful. In my experience, I've worked with programs that have very low percentage of their classes are taught by part-time faculty. And so including them in a survey may not be completely necessary, but I've also worked with departments and units that have a very high percentage of their courses taught by part-time or contingent faculty members. And so including their voice in that process might be more important for those types of programs. But again, that's your decision. But certainly if you'd like to talk to me about it or anybody else in our office about that, we're happy to consult to just kind of talk through what might be best for you and your program. Additionally, by December 1, let us know what, if any changes you would like to make to the alumni invitation letter. That invitation form is on the Blackboard page that I just showed you. There's basically just one or two areas where you kind of plug in your program, and then also the person who is going to serve as the signatory of it. Usually it's the department chair or program director that kind of, it looks like the email is coming out from. But if there's any additional language, customized language that you would like to include at the end, let us know, and we can certainly have that added into the communication that goes out to students. And additionally, if there is for some reason, if that February 1st, 2021 date for administration of the launch date of either the faculty or the alumni survey does not work, let us know, and let us know the reasons why and what dates might be better. But otherwise, if you don't indicate that, then February 1st is going to be when we will administer those surveys. So that's what's kind of due by the end of the semester, if you will, by December 1. Then next steps in spring 2021, really this is where you start to immerse yourself in the information that's out there in the data resource page and TK20, et cetera. So reviewing curriculum maps, reviewing your student learning outcomes, reviewing those assessment plans, completing any SLO assessments that are necessary to do. Hopefully, fingers crossed, you all have been doing great and keeping up with your one SLO a year, and it's just a matter of compiling all of that information. Identifying your peer institutions, conducting a peer comparison in terms of finding out that data from your peer institutions, and then developing program improvement plans using the SLO assessment results, but also the institutional data that you've derived. Also during the spring, I should point out that I'll be meeting with each of your units and programs, finding a time to meet with each of your units and programs, just to continue to provide support, to address additional questions, to kind of help you through this process. So that's something else that I'll make sure to set time aside for pretty early in the spring semester as you begin this, the process. So just, I will kind of stop there. And I know we have plenty of time because this was kind of for an hour and a half, so we still have about half the time left for questions. Again, if you want to, if you don't have a question right now and you want to email me later, mdesant@gmu.edu. I will long lament that one day I will work at an institution that has my entire last name on my email. Until then, mdesant@gmu.edu will work just fine. And like I said, happy to address any questions that you may have now. And so I will kind of conclude sharing my screen so we can go back to this. And I see there are several things in the chat box area. So not to put Karen or Sheena on the spot, but if one of you could kind of help me out with navigating those in case there are any questions, or just to share the various mascots of the programs.
Sure, Matthew, maybe one thing we could affirm is that when the survey results will be coming back from after it goes out in December, is that April or May when we would be?
It will be April, yeah. So yeah, the survey will go out February 1st. Typically it'll stay open for 3 to 4 weeks, and then it'll close, and programs will get the data back late March, early April.
Okay, great, thank you.
I just had a quick question with the surveys. Do you guys want it only coming from you, or is it something that we can send reminders? Because I know that, we want to make sure that they feel like it's anonymous, but perhaps an extra push from us could be helpful. But what are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm certainly open to that idea. I mean, in the system that we have, we can make it appear as if it's coming from you, if that's something that we want to do. But also, we can do something where we provide a general link that you're able to share that it would still require them to potentially authenticate. So that's something we can work through, I think, at a department by department level. And I agree with you. I think that generally students respond best to faculty and the programs that they're familiar with, rather than an office such as ours that they might not have had much interaction with during their time there. So yeah, that's something I'm happy to kind of work through at a individual case level.
Yeah, the reason why I bring it up is because with faculty evaluations, we had a new system this semester for fall session 1, and I was able to get the reports and see, how many students were filling it out for each faculty member, but I wasn't able to get any link or direct them properly in a place they could fill it out. So I actually had students emailing me and saying, we didn't get the evaluation. You keep reminding us, but we didn't get it. And I went back to the office, and again, at that time, because it's a new system, they were like, well, you could tell them they got an email from us. And the students were saying they didn't. I think it may have been going in their spam folder.
Yeah.
I don't know. But so it was this back and forth where the students were actually, because again, I was reminding them on the monthly call and email, they're like, we're trying to do this for you, but we can't get the link. So I'm just thinking ahead of like, I was great. You guys are going to email them out, but let's make sure we get the link so that when we can follow up and they are trying to, do what we're asking them to do and help us out, that we're able to provide that information to them.
Yeah, no, I think that makes all the sense in the world. And I know just from my own personal experience that, following through with people, the faculty and programs that the students are familiar with is a great way of just continuing to increase that response rate and get more engagement and to address any of those technical issues that might happen where, something goes into a spam folder, but, an email coming directly from you would go straight into their inbox. And so it would just alert them to the fact that, oh, maybe there is this other, survey that I need to complete. And so, yeah, we can absolutely work on that. That's not a problem at all. And so, thank you, Sheena, for addressing that. So the alumni template letter is on the Blackboard site. If you're looking for it, it's under, I think, survey template heading. And so you can access that information there. So I like some of these mascots quite a bit. I'm just looking through right now, big mug of coffee. I can appreciate that. And the escargot, that's pretty fantastic. That reminds me of the movie Trading Places with Eddie Murphy back in the 1980s. And they're very funny joke that was told in that movie. So pretty great. In terms of input to the faculty survey, that's something that, because I'm so new, I'm always open to those types of things. But historically, I'm not sure if we have. But that is something that if there are additional items that you feel might be very applicable to your particular program that you feel that the faculty should be addressing, that's a conversation I'm very open to having. So if there's additional questions or modifications of questions that need to be made, reach out to me. We can have that discussion and we can kind of talk through what the logistics of that might look like, but very open to that. And then in terms of if you need to add additional people to Blackboard, you can email Karen. I was just about to say that. So email Karen, and if it's new people to the committee, you can CC me on that message just so we have, I'm in the loop as well. But Karen's can be the primary point if there's Blackboard issues or getting things added there. So as I mentioned, as you kind of continue to digest information about this, let us know how we can help, how we can assist, and let us know what we can do to make this process more meaningful for you. I mean, ultimately, that's going back to what I said at the beginning, that's really what this is all about. It's about being a meaningful process, about one that is going to help strengthen your program, that's going to help students in your program be successful, that's going to allow your program to be rewarding for all of its faculty, and ultimately allow for your alumni to also be positively impacted by the direction of the program. So, let us know how we can be supportive through this process, through the data that we're providing, through the information that we're providing. The clarity of that is going to be important, obviously. And as you continue to work through this and encounter issues or setbacks or potential blockers, again, feel free to reach out to me at any time. I'm always happy to help. So I don't see any other questions in the survey, so or on the chat box, I should say. So you know, if you all don't have any other questions, you can feel free to leave. This is being recorded, so we'll make sure that this is put up on the Blackboard site. So if some of your colleagues were not able to attend, they can watch this at a later date. So will the linguistics program conduct a faculty survey separate from the English department? I'm not 100% sure, Douglas, but I will follow up with you on that after this meeting. And we can talk about the logistics of that. But yes, that works. So yeah, so thank you everyone for attending. I'll kind of hang on here for a little bit, and if people have additional questions, I'll continue to answer them, but otherwise you can have a wonderful day. So yeah, thank you so much for your time.